and welcome to live 4 of whatever this is. And today we're doing something uh, new. Uh, and before that, I'll just welcome our main guest, or just the one guest, which is Lauren. Hi.
Hello.
Oh, let me stop sharing my screen so you can see my face. Hi.
Hello.
Okay. Um, and those there's nobody watching right now, but if people were watching, they would see what is on the screen right now, which is the topic, uh, and we'll get to that shortly. And before that, did you start recording yourself,
I did,
your voice?
yes.
Okay, so let
Yes.
me do that.
I should
Actually, your
apologise to all of your Twitch followers that I am also doing an art project at the same time. So if I'm not looking at
it's
you, that's why.
I'm drinking I'm drinking an energy drink and eating strawberries.
So it's all good.
So yeah, it's fine. Oh, stop. That'll happen sometimes. Just letting you know, because what happens is I've set my Google Assistant to tell me, or at least ring every 2 hours
Mm.
of the day. uh, so it's like if I'm doing something, it's either to take a break, but mostly it is because I play Hogwarts Mystery on my phone. uh, so I need to remember to log in and
Yep.
do my classes in quotes. uh, okay, getting back to the topic. We keep doing this, just letting people know we go off topic a lot.
It's kind of a thing.
Yeah. uh, I still haven't started recording my voice, I just realized, so
We
I'm doing that.
should probably make an attempt to try and sync it up too.
uh, but I think this stream will be there, so
Ah.
I can use it. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's it helps in its own ways. Okay, I started recording my voice, and I think we are good to go.
Cool.
Oh, so first off, how did what will let's start with what is upload and sync, and how did we come up with that name? um,
So we
what
had
do
a
you remember about? I
well,
think
we had a sort of conversation that led to the miniseries, and then we went, well, why don't we do this other thing? And that's upload and sync. And somehow the miniseries became absorbed by upload and sync.
I think okay, how the way I remember it is, I think it started there was a TV series called Upload on Amazon Prime Video.
Mhm.
If people who have not watched it or haven't checked it out, maybe check it out, because I think I asked you about it because I had recently watched it. This was sometime
Mm.
in February. Is it February or is it February? Do you pronounce the R?
February.
Okay.
I do. I just don't pronounce the middle of the word.
Because yeah, I think Americans
February.
don't say the R, right? They say February, February,
Mm.
February. Yeah, I tend to do it. Anyway, okay. Like I said, we go off topic. So I asked you about the show, and you hadn't watched it. Have you still watched it? No.
No, I still haven't watched it. I'm
Okay.
terrible at watching things,
Okay.
which we'll
So
get
it
on
is.
to.
Yeah. So it's a science fiction show. So that
Mm.
is how it came about, and I mentioned it, and then we had some conversation, and then you brought up I don't
Pro-
remember.
it's Profits of Science Fiction.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like, there's this really cool show that you'd probably
yeah.
enjoy,
And
and
then
it's
I was
about.
like, I went through the episode list, and I was like, okay, cool names. And then you're like,
You said
I
you'd heard of two of them, and I
yeah,
was like,
Jules
oh,
Verne
cool, cool.
and Isaac Asimov. I hope I'm
Yeah,
pronouncing that right. Yes.
yeah.
And then you were like,
But
Mary
you've heard of
Shelley?
Mary Shelley, right?
Yeah, Mary Shelley, right? And I was like, nope, never heard of her. And
And
then
I
you're
was
like,
like, okay, so we're
Frankenstein?
watching the whole show together.
Yeah. So that's how it went. And then we're like, okay, this is cool. Maybe we can make a podcast out of it.
Yeah,
And I'm like, what should we name it? And that's how upload and sync came up.
yeah,
And so the concept is we will be, I mean, in the future episodes it becomes more clear for for listeners slash viewers. So uh, it's it's not exactly, but we we thought it kind of fits because we are uploading ideas, uh,
yeah,
and through conversations we are syncing it, like,
yeah,
so that's, yeah. And it also has that science fiction kind of ring to it.
yeah.
um, Anyway, so today's topic, or today's episode, is the first episode, right, of
Yeah.
of the series, called Prophets of Science Fiction. And I watched it on YouTube. Somebody was kind enough to load a copy of the episode. When did you watch it first?
When I watched it first would be the year it came out, so 2011. But
Yeah.
I particularly like. I remember watching the whole series, but the one that really stuck with me is Philip K. Dick, which it might be tomorrow or the day after when we're watching that.
Mhm.
But I remember it being really, really good.
Okay.
And I watched it again this morning
Yeah, of course. I watched
on
it for the first time this morning.
what was it called? The site? Oh, I have no TV.com. I think it's called,
Wow.
which is a great site. Should totally support it.
Okay. So, was that? Um, yeah. Um, and yeah, again, I heard of Mary Shelley for the first time in February, 2 months ago. But I had heard of Frankenstein though.
Mm,
I haven't read the book. Full disclosure, I haven't read the book yet, and I've heard of it being referred over the years. I mean, in TV shows, crime related TV shows, in other literary works, in
yeah.
comics. And I just know that it it is about a guy who brings, I mean, of course today I learned much more in the episode, which I'll come to shortly. What I knew so far from just the word Frankenstein is exactly. And I think there's this people who haven't read kind of think that the name of the monster is Frankenstein,
Mm,
which I am also guilty of. At some point, I might have also, because not knowing the name of the characters, and let's be honest, I didn't even know who wrote the story, right? So, so I might have also likened, I mean, thought that whenever I heard the name Frankenstein, it was the monster. Um, and after watching the
yeah.
episode, it, like today, it was a good, it, I mean, for the length of the episode, that is, it's like, it was for what, 40 43 minutes.
Yeah.
It was quite informative. I mean,
Mm,
I liked it. I mean, from like, from what I got to learn from it, it
yeah.
was
I really one of
she
the things I really loved about it was how they go into how, because it's prophets of science fiction. It's how
yeah.
the writers, uh, the stuff they were writing about has now come to pass in terms of science, various parts of science, and then that's one of the reasons I found the show particularly fascinating.
Mhm.
But I read Frankenstein at school in year 9 when I was about 14,
Yeah.
and had to write some essays on it.
Wow.
Uh, but yeah, and I've watched the classic Boris Karloff, which is a brilliant movie, but very strange if you've read the book, uh,
No.
as
Doesn't ring a
detailed in
bell.
the
Okay.
documentary. Oh,
um
you're the movie watcher. You should totally watch the Boris Karloff Frankenstein. It's great.
Oh,
It really is.
the 1931, which they mentioned in the episode, the
Yeah,
1931 movie.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they showed scenes of it. It looks pretty. It looked pretty ahead of its time for a 1931 movie. To be honest, I mean, I from the little they showed in the episode, uh, what, especially the makeup on that the guy who played
mm,
the monster.
Boris Karloff.
Oh, that's his name. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought when you said, I thought you were it.
No,
Usually
he.
they say the director's name
Yeah.
when you say this person's movie.
It was
Uh,
of the time when it was still entertainment was largely theatre based. So
mhm.
particularly in this country, I think, but also in America, you would say, "Oh, it's so and so's rendition of this character." So you'd say
Right,
Olivier's Hamlet or whatever.
right.
So
Okay, that makes sense. So I didn't know that. Okay, because they did mention Boris. I don't know. I don't. I can't say the last name. Uh,
Karlov.
Karloff. Okay, so
Yeah.
Boris Karloff's Frankenstein, and I was like, okay, maybe I assumed it must be the director that they've said.
Mm,
So yeah, that's so. He, I like the makeup. I like the costumes, of course, very
mm.
30s,
A very
and
30s take on an earlier time period.
yeah. And I like the other thing. The one of the things that they mentioned was she. I think you were you said it first in the chat, and they also mentioned it. They kind of mentioned it more than once in the episode as well, as the she is the the founder or the creator or the first science fiction writer in
Yeah.
history. And I was like, okay, that makes sense because before that there wasn't much science to I
Mm,
mean, before that there was fiction, I'm sure, and there was other like literary works. I mean, I haven't read much, so I can't say. Maybe you can tell me
mm.
more. I'm
The
thinking 50 years before that there was Shakespeare. I think
sorry.
so. I'm just. I know you're free to, yeah.
200 years before that there was Shakespeare.
Oh, okay.
That's that's the first thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I
So
didn't know Shakespeare. I thought Shakespeare was 17th century.
yeah,
He was
16.
17th century.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm thinking 18th century. Okay, so
yeah.
yeah, okay. I'm wrong right off the bat. So I'll just shut up
So
right now before I
that's good. It's
embarrass
good.
myself further. Uh,
When she was writing,
yeah,
you'd you'd had the sort of gothic tradition, which so vampires and ghost stories, and actually one of the things that people used to do was get together and tell ghost stories around the fire, particularly the group of people that she was with, which was sort of the intelligentsia of the time and the romantic poets, and they were
yeah,
really into that sort of
hmm,
gothic ghost story thing. And but it was also a time when science was being written about, but it was being demonstrated and understood more than it had been because not too long before science had been viewed as heresy. So you've got maybe 100, 150 years where people are starting to go, okay, I disagree with this, but I'm not allowed to burn you at the stake for you
hmm,
saying it.
hmm,
So when that sort of went away and people started being able to do demonstrations like the anatomists,
yeah,
Galvani, Faraday,
yeah,
they would demonstrate techniques, new experiments, or they'd rehash experiments for public viewing.
yeah,
And you'd have the wealthier families, like the one that Mary Shelley came from, you'd have people going around taking their inventions and showing them to people,
yeah,
like which is how Ada, it's gone out of my head. Ada Lovelace came across Babbage's thinking engine and how she ended up collaborating with him on that, which I think we talked about in our other podcast briefly. Um,
yeah. We did
but
talk about, but I don't know about this the lady that you mentioned. Did we talk about that as well?
I think so. But it was about a year ago, so don't worry.
Yeah.
She's only the mother of modern computing, yeah. Um, we'll get onto that later. Uh,
Okay.
um, so she was writing at a time when all these new ideas were happening, and the
Yeah.
question that she asked, which is the core question of all good science fiction, is if it's possible, should we?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that's what
I
she's
mean that
asking.
also like yeah, you're right. They did mention about the ethics
Mm,
part of and like stuff that I had never never given much thought to. as in, like they said that science fiction, there are three identifiers
Mm,
for science fiction, which they said was: one, it has to be based on the science of the time
mm,
the book is written or the movie is made, or and then it has needs to have a human connection, I
mm.
think was the second. And the third is uh, it has to maybe like touch upon what this science that we have can do in the future or something,
Yeah,
like that's the third part. And that what all these three things make good science fiction.
yeah,
And so Mary Shelley was the first person to do it
yeah,
with her Frankenstein. And that was like, that I never thought of it. For me, science fiction was I mean was it has to do with science.
yeah,
So- and then it needs to be fiction.
yeah,
That makes it science fiction for me. That's all there was.
yeah,
And I was like, okay, when they mentioned that in the episode, I was like, oh, that's neat. I mean,
yeah.
there are rules that
I suppose one of the definitions is before you had sort of fantasies, which were not grounded in science.
yeah,
And I guess she was the first one who went, well, this is based on science that I know, but this is how you could theoretically get to a logical conclusion with it.
yes,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah,
Also, one more thing. I mean, when you were mentioning about Galvani and Faraday and all that,
mm,
I had this thought. I mean, schools must have been very different 200 years ago than they are right now. So
very
I'm also
different.
thinking science was more demonstrative than theoretical. Like they didn't really maybe study science in the school. Like they didn't have the knowledge that we have right now, so
Yeah,
their textbooks were also not this detailed. uh,
yeah. I think to
so
an extent there weren't textbooks
at all,
as
right?
well.
Yeah, so
There was
there's
some,
not
but
much
they,
science
yeah.
because they didn't know about the atom, so there was not any much, like even chemistry must have been very different for them
Mm,
back
mm.
then. So and even
There's a book
biology, people are still learning it. There's
there
not
is a
much.
book I am dying to get you to read on the Age of Enlightenment, which
Uh-huh.
talks about the. It starts with Banks and his voyage to Haiti,
Uh-huh.
and then it talks about the sort of scientific revolution just before she was writing,
Okay.
um, and all of that development and how it started to shift. But yeah, schools, certainly public schools in the UK,
Mhm.
which by which I mean state schools. I know in other countries public schools are actually private schools, which really confuses me. Um, you
Mm.
there
Ah, yeah, yeah.
there were sort of penny a day subscriptions. We didn't really have state schools at that time, but the
Yeah.
ones that were in existence were penny a day
Okay.
uh, things or church schools, and there was no set curriculum.
Hmm.
People could teach what they wanted, to which was good in some ways, bad in
Yeah.
others, as it
Yeah.
always is. But for the most part, there was very little science. It was geared towards you being able to get a job,
Yeah.
so there were more vocational things,
Yeah.
and numeracy and literacy,
Yeah.
uh,
Job or an
draftsmanship.
apprenticeship, right? For the
Yeah,
career that you want to
yeah. And most
pursue.
people left school at 12
Mhm.
or 14,
Yeah.
and then if you stayed on, you'd start to learn things like that.
Yeah. So it's like now we call it science fiction because
Mm.
we know in but at that time, what do you think? Like, did she did she know that she was writing like science fiction, or was it called science even? Because it's like she used anatomy and all that. So
I suppose
science,
she
the
would.
definition of science was must have been very different to what how we know it right now, right now 200 years later. uh,
It was something done by mysterious men in dusty rooms for the most part.
yeah,
So I suppose it was a little bit closer to alchemy than we
yeah,
think
yeah,
of today,
yeah,
because the science is very ordered
yeah,
today. Which
because
of course you get in Frankenstein himself, because he is a strange man in a dusty room,
mm,
and you've got that air of the madman about
yeah,
him. And
yeah, yeah,
a
yeah,
lot of the front runners of science at the time, you could either they straddle the line of, is this okay what you're doing, or is it actually kind of not?
Yeah.
um,
I mean,
there wasn't
we'll get
really
to
a,
that. I mean,
yeah.
that's a different, that's a much detailed topic. Uh, Also, before one more, I think one more point I just recalled when you were. I mean, this is. I think we also discussed this in a different podcast in a different episode when we are talking
Mm,
about flight and birds, if you remember, with
mm,
Emily. And in that we had I forget the name now. We talked about how all these science. I mean, science related discoveries and stuff, you tended
mm,
to run in the family, where like, and we
yeah.
had, we had this joke when we were like, this Christmas, we imagined Christmas dinners where all these intellectuals gathered in a room, and they all,
Yeah.
because, and I that kind of it is something similar we saw in this episode as well, as in Shelley's father, uh,
Mm,
who you used to, invite all these intellectuals into his house, and they used to have these fancy dinners. And that's how, which I think he allowed Mary as well to be, take part in.
yeah,
And
which was
that's how,
unusual.
yeah, uh, for her time, right, at
Yeah.
yeah. And that's how they said that, she used to, absorb all these knowledge from just listening to all these people talk, have these conversations. And so also,
Yeah.
that also like got me thinking, as in, maybe science was, all the science talk was limited to the community of intellectuals, and
Yeah.
it was not very accessible to the common people.
Yeah.
I would say, like, maybe the middle class or lower middle class, because there were no schools and stuff, right?
Yeah.
uh, so, and so it's like, uh, in a way, Mary was lucky
Mm.
that she had access to all this.
Yes, definitely. There's definitely privilege there.
Yeah. And
I mean,
then,
there's also. I mean, you talked about her father, but I think you can't look at the writing of Frankenstein or her life without looking at Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, who was her mother and was
oh,
one of the
her
first.
mother's name was also Shelley, Mary.
Yes, yeah, she was named for her, Mary
Wow. Okay.
Wollstonecraft Shelley.
Yeah.
Um, and she died shortly after Mary Shelley was born,
Yeah.
so she never really
11
knew
days.
her.
11 days, they said.
But she
I
wrote,
remember.
what is it? I can't remember the exact title, but it's something like "Vindication of the Rights of Women," and it like Mary, like her daughter, she was one of the few women writing at the time who had the gumption, but also the background and the education and the protection to an extent to put her own name on her writing. So she
Hmm.
was writing about women's rights at a time when we really didn't have that many.
Yeah. I
She
mean,
was
yeah,
she
yeah,
was
yeah.
revolutionizing stuff, and I
Yeah.
think
They did mention her as a feminist, but I was
yeah,
like, wow, feminist, early 19th century.
yeah,
That's so cool. Uh,
yeah.
okay.
So that was all. Mary grew up with her mother's words, but without her mother. But those words shaped who she chose to be, I think,
Hmm.
and they come through in the writing as well. It's uh, yeah, there's parts of the narrative. It's very much from the male point of view, but often the moments of caution come in where the woman comes in and goes, "What are you doing?"
Hmm.
So there's elements of that as well. Well, I think she just set out to write a story that would scare the pants off her friends and succeeded.
Yeah, that yeah, of course. I think I don't know if that, how true that is, because
It's
uh,
true.
that's true.
We have their
Did she
diaries.
write her own biography, or like her autobiography or something? How do people
Um,
know of that?
they kept diaries. Her and
Okay.
her friends.
So they got it from a journal, as in they had some
Mm,
sort of a competition over the summer of 1816, or that's how the episode
yeah,
begins.
and
Uh,
cause her friends. I can't remember who else was there with them. It's gone from my brain. But her husband died not too long after Percy Bysshe Shelley. I
yeah,
really hope I'm
I think,
thinking of the right person.
yes, Percy Shelley, he died
That's it.
in 1823. I'm not wrong.
I wrote a really old blog post about that
Oh,
ages and ages ago because when he died, his friend, he was cremated, and his friend reached into the flaming pyre in a fit of romanticism and pulled out his heart so he could give it to Mary so she could have it with him. It was probably part of his liver, but but that's the kind of people that we're dealing with.
very
But
intense and
they wrote about that summer too, because because he did die young, and because they did really like what the stories that came out of it, and they valued the friendship and stuff. So you can build a picture of that time from all of their writings.
okay. But did they? I mean, the episode did mention that they were, as a couple, they were very unlucky. I mean, they had four children, but then three of them died very in
Mm-hmm.
their infancy. Didn't really mention what happened of the fourth child though, but I haven't seen her Wikipedia. Did she have a child or?
Let me just Google that.
Okay. Yes, that's another thing that we do. Live Googling. Um,
It's definitely a thing that people do. It's fine. Uh, I don't think she necessarily had any, according to Wikipedia. Let me have a look. Where is her family?
because I mean they were very, but like they highlighted over how throughout her life it was more about like she kept facing death
Yeah.
right off the bat, like 11th day of her life her mom dies, and then her husband dies young, her children keep dying.
Children keep
Yeah,
dying, yeah. I mean, there was a great deal. Again, we're at that point of medical understanding where they know what's wrong with you, but they can't fix it.
yeah,
Um, so an
because
infant
I think
mortality was
even
something
she
like
died of I think
brain tumor.
brain tumor in her
Yeah,
early 50s.
yeah.
So it was they kind of used that to explain her pessimistic tone of writing in her works. And they were
Mm.
like, maybe that is the reason why much of her writing is had this dark undertones and
I've been thinking about this with Edgar Allan Poe because I've been reading a lot of that.
uh-huh.
I've got a complete works and I'm making my way through, and he's getting better over time, which is a huge relief. I felt
But
really bad
do you
about
think
disliking it.
that I mean how much of a personal life affects, I mean how much of it seeps into the
Oh,
writing?
huge amounts,
Huge
huge
amount.
amounts.
Okay.
I edit for a bunch of short story people, and this year you can see with the whole stuff with 2020 and the pandemic,
Yeah.
you can see part of it they're trying to escape. You write for escapism, and part of it you're trying to understand your world. So
Uh-huh.
we've got people writing about the pandemic, we've got people writing about death and what it means to them or what it will feel like
Yeah.
to go through. So simply as a means to understand your world, that's what people use writing for. So
Yeah.
definitely I suppose the death related and darker parts of her existence came out in it.
Yeah. I mean,
um
even if she didn't mean to, it just tends to happen
yeah, I
sometimes.
mean,
Yeah.
we always focus on Frankenstein as well, which I think is a very hopeful story. But some of her other works are darker. There's a The Last Man is a particularly dark one because it's about the end of the world.
Okay. Wow.
um
She okay. Again, I mean, people writing about the end of the world in the early 19th century is. I mean, I would love to see what how she imagined it as. I
mm,
mean, because now we when we talk about end of the world, we say we we bring it upon ourselves, right? Because we go
mm,
too far with our technology, or AI destroys us,
yeah,
or we
climate
ruin,
change.
yeah, climate change, exactly, all our resources are gone or something like
Yeah,
that. But this is what pre-industrial revolution. So I don't I would love
it's
to know how she imagined us wiping ourselves.
well, the industrial revolution is going,
Is
and
ongoing, yes, yeah.
there have been major plagues. So I've not read The Last Man, but
Mhm.
I because when I wrote essays at school, I read digests of the other things that she wrote because I was that kind of nerd. I'm pretty sure no one else did. I don't even know if anyone else in my class finished the novel. But I did because I do that. We only had to like analyze like a small part of it, but
Yeah.
I read the whole thing. Um, yeah, I think she at the time they would have been stepping away from the because we've in Europe we've had a vision of the end of the world for centuries because of the Book of Revelations and what it says will happen in the Bible on the day of reckoning. The end of the world will happen,
Okay.
and
Okay.
that's
I'm not
why.
aware if it's.
Oh yeah, there's this huge thing. Everyone who's dead will come back to life and be judged, and then all of the good
Wow.
people will go to heaven, and everyone else will stay in hell forever.
Okay.
Um,
So
which
so
is
Earth is
why we
hell,
had.
or
Well, no, they'll go down.
oh, down. Okay.
Earth will
Okay.
go away, but
Ah.
yeah, which is why you have this huge thing about it comes through in Frankenstein as well because you're using the body parts of the dead and they will need those body parts on the day of reckoning, which is one of the reasons that we didn't have cremation in our culture for a long time because if you were cremated you couldn't come back.
Hmm.
So you've got that sort of everyone climbing out of the grave. I suppose the zombie thing has been there for us for a very long time. The end of
Okay,
the
that's
world
that's
meaning
very
dead people.
interesting because in our culture in South Asian, I don't know, I mean others, we cremate, but then we also kind of believe in reincarnation. So I'm kind of
Mm.
wondering, uh, because
Ours is a very literal translation of the Bible, I think.
hmm,
Our concept of that.
I mean I mean okay, briefly coming back to the story itself, Frankenstein is
Mm.
it's also based on, I mean, the the story is made possible because of this grave digging, and because that's how I think
Mm.
the Dr. Frankenstein is able to have access to parts of human as well as animal body parts, which
Yeah,
he uses to construct his art
creation.
creation. Yes. Um but how they said she was in her teens when she wrote this.
Yeah, 19.
She was 19. Wow,
Yeah.
that's
It's one of the things that comes up a lot on the internet, or in my corners of the internet, because we get a lot of gatekeeping in science fiction circles and various fandoms by,
mhm.
and I hate to generalize, usually dudes, going, "Oh well, you're a girl, you can't like science fiction, you can't have an appreciation of it." And I'm like, the first science fiction writer was a 19-year-old girl. Go
Yeah,
away. But
yeah.
yeah,
That's a very silly argument to make. I mean,
yes,
girls can't like science fiction.
yeah.
I
So
mean, I kind of find it funny when people have that argument with sports as well. Like
mm,
girls can't like sports. I'm like, what has sports got to do with gender?
yeah,
I don't. I mean,
yeah,
I never understood it even before the internet and all that, because m- I remember my sister and like I and my sister, we had shared an equal love for cricket.
yeah,
We would sit together and we'd do this math. I think which, oh my god, okay, viewers don't know, you know very well, because when I'm watching cricket, there's a lot of math involved because like to keep track of how many runs are needed to score, and how many balls are remaining, and I kind of try that because that is part of my
mm,
sports viewing experience, and this I share with my sister as well. This way back in the 90s, and I have memories of my sister and I in our early, we weren't even teens then. I think we were like ages 7 and 9 or something. We would sit with a book and a pencil because
yeah,
we didn't have calculators even, and do these sums. And so basically, what? Okay. And when other people said, it would mock, like saying girls can't like cricket and girls don't have. I'm like, no, that makes no sense.
well, that's not true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah. Anyway, uh, and also the other thing, again, coming like now, finally coming back to what you said,
mm.
the ethics and stuff that she had in her. Do you think that she knew of it, or I mean, she knew what she was doing, or is it like in we I mean, I don't know how to phrase it. Uh, like
Are you asking whether she knew that she was asking questions about ethics?
exactly. Or is it
Yeah.
like she just wanted to, I mean, since we talked about,
Mm.
like, it was a literary competition. So for
Yeah.
her,
Yeah.
it was like, I just want to write a scary story. It came in my dream.
Mm.
And I just want to write about a guy who brought another, who created, not exactly a monster, because I think in the novel, she didn't really, I mean, that wasn't
Yeah.
her
I
intention, right? Of,
when people call Frankenstein's monster Frankenstein, and then someone else goes, well, actually, that wasn't the name of the monster. That's the name of the doctor. I think her point is Frankenstein is the monster,
exactly,
and the
yes.
monster is actually a gentle soul. I mean, he's vegetarian, he's erudite, he
Yeah,
he reads,
yeah.
listens to he listens to people's arguments, he talks to people. Much he's much more stable than his creator in many ways.
Hmm.
I think I think as is the nature of every story, you can start off thinking I'll write something for this purpose, and then it'll go off and be its own thing.
Yeah.
And the more she looked at it, the more she went, well, can I write this without questioning it? Um,
So, I mean, I haven't read the book, and since you
mm,
have, so you need to tell me: is it like, is it?
16 years ago. No,
No, I mean, how
18
do you?
years ago.
Okay,
God.
how do you remember it? What is it part of the story that does it involve the commentary of, does she point it out, or is it like after we read it we say it in, but
No, we see it. I don't think there are moments when for Frankenstein questions what he has done, but mostly what he does is go, "Ooh, I can do a thing. Oh, I've done a thing. Isn't it cool? Oh no, the thing is alive and has needs. I'm not taking responsibility for this thing, even though I chose to make it in the way I chose to make it.
yeah,
I'm out. Oh wait, no, it wants other things, but the only way that it will get me to do that is by threatening me because I don't want anything to do with it. No, I've done a terrible thing. I'm going to flee.
hmm,
He doesn't face up to the question at any point, but as readers, she challenges us to do the questioning. I
yeah,
think on his
yeah, yeah.
behalf,
So it's
um,
like, I mean, the her
and it's not just Frankenstein that she's asking the question of; it's the villagers. Because
okay,
I know we do no spoilers, but there's a fairly major. You will probably know from pop culture that it doesn't end well for anyone in the book. The monster dies at the end. I don't like that he does. I mean, she leaves it kind of open because you don't see his corpse, but there's a whole sequence where the locals turn on him because of the way he looks, despite the fact that he's a really gentle soul.
hmm,
And essentially, you get the whole torch and pitchfork thing happening. Um, so she's not just asking questions about whether Frankenstein should do stuff. She's asking questions about whether we as humans deserve to interact with people who are good but different. What would be our response if there was someone who just looked a bit different? And of course, she was basing it on centuries of oppression, which continued
yeah,
after
yeah,
and are continuing now. But she, so she's asking the question of Frankenstein. She's asking it of the people around him, the professor he goes to, where he learns at his university about electrolysis and galvanism and stuff. And she's asking it of every person. She asks it of the monster, and the monster is the only one that rises. Is the
yeah,
only one who chooses not to hurt people until he's cornered, or until he has no option.
yeah.
But then he does when he does choose, he's I think he says himself that he has become almost fully human now that he has chosen to take advantage. Now that he's chosen to hurt.
Okay. I mean, no, okay, of course. I mean, I think I've established this. I don't know how the story goes. I don't know
Mm,
how it ends, is even. This is just basing off the episode that I just watched.
yeah.
So it's from what I understand is he, uh, I'm just giving my take on it
Hmm.
from what I watched is. the doctor, he, I think Mary kind of put herself in the doctor's shoes, because I think even she felt like she's an outsider, uh,
Yeah.
and so this guy is also kind of this introvert, kind of secluded guy who does not, who kind of feels away, like even if he's in society but not a part of society, that's what he feels. And then he creates this is this thing out of what, human parts, animal parts, and he also, yeah, like he uses electricity to bring it to life. I think what he, the thing that I mean, he does not know what he's doing, as in where it can go.
Yeah.
So he does not want to take responsibility, like you said. Once it comes to life, he does not know what to do because he didn't see it come, or he
Yeah.
he wanted it to come to life, but he didn't think so far as to what to do after
Yeah.
it comes to life. So he does not take responsibility, and now the monster, or let's not call it the monster, uh, the thing.
The the
Not
modern Prometheus.
Yes. Uh,
The
okay.
Yeah, well, the monster. That's how we refer to it
The book also
in
use the term monster, does it, or
the
is it
creature.
the creature? Okay, let's call it that. So the creature is now left to fend for itself.
Hmm.
And I think it's the episode said that it's highly intelligent. I mean,
Hmm.
it understand. I mean, it takes a while, but it very quickly realizes that it can pick up languages, and it can learn very quickly. So it
Yeah.
learns from observation. It learns from humans on the mannerisms and everything, and then realizes that uh, and people don't want to be near it,
Yeah.
or are scared of
Yeah.
how the creature appear is in appearance. And then the creature wants another of its own kind,
Yeah.
and that is why it goes back to the doctor and
Yeah.
asks for a female version
Yeah.
of itself. And that is when the doctor realizes uh, what can happen if
Yeah.
he builds another uh, version, a female version, because he's like, what if they procreate and create a new race? Or
Not
is that
not
part,
in.
or was it, is it like I mean, is it
Yeah, he does worry about that. I think even at the time I was like, well, I mean, even based on galvanism, that's not going to happen. uh, yeah, I think he's worried about it, and then he starts worrying that the female will hate the creature on sight, and that they'll just both kill him, um, and that
okay?
they'll go after his family, and it's all his fear. It's all him. It's all his
So no, I mean, where does the
desire
book
to
end,
create.
and where does, like, these questions that we have started asking? So I don't know at what point the book ends. Does it end with a
Well,
question, as in, does it have an open ending, or is it like, did he like, you just gave me that spoiler, as in the creature dies, right,
yeah.
at the end?
I think
Or is
I
it Dr. Frankenstein who dies?
now I'm
I
thinking.
didn't
No,
understand.
I have this memory of a mill that's burning, but I think that might be a film version.
Huh.
I believe in the book, the creature just keeps pursuing Victor
Hmm.
Frankenstein,
Mhm.
um, and he wants to. He just wants to. He just wants to not be alone. The creature,
Yeah.
but Frankenstein is convinced that he's evil, and that there is no solution to this.
Yeah.
So uh, he kills one of his friends. The creature kills one of his friends. I can't remember if it was accidental or not.
Okay.
But Frankenstein is accused of his murder because he can't tell him he made this creature, because that's also illegal. Uh,
Yeah.
so he ends up chasing him to the North Pole,
Okay.
and uh, the creature is now the one that's running, and Frankenstein's the one that's pursuing.
Okay.
Oh no, sorry, no, I've missed a bit. Yeah. So all of this is happening, and because he won't create the female, because he tore the female apart,
Yeah.
the creature kills Frankenstein's wife on
Oh,
their wedding night.
wow.
So now Frankenstein becomes the pursuer,
Yeah.
and they end up in the North Pole. And I don't think Frankenstein reaches him. The last part of the story is, it's like the narrative switches between three different people. There's the captain of the boat, who I think it starts off with him saying, "I want to tell you the story of this weird dude and some awful things that happened." I mean,
Oh,
much better
so
written than
it's told from the point of view of uh
that. A lot of things at the time were written as if they were an account of something that had happened. So she uses that device to introduce Victor and the creature.
okay.
The
So
next
it's
part
like
of
a
the book,
story within a story, as in someone telling
yeah, yeah,
another.
yeah,
I'll tell you about this story, and then
yeah,
oh wow,
and in that
amazing.
way,
That's
she can do a thing where you don't see what ultimately happens, but Captain Walton tells you what he thinks happened.
yeah,
So it gives you that air of mystery at
yeah,
the
yeah,
end.
yeah, yeah. Okay, that's
Yeah.
clever.
So, and some of it's from the point of view of the Frankenstein, and some of it's from the point of view of the creature.
Hmm.
So, which is how she allows you to decide which one of them is the better person.
Yeah.
Uh,
So the
yeah.
and like yeah, like you rightly said, it does. It's like the society is the monster because I mean because the
Mm,
creature didn't ask to be created, right? Because
no.
yeah, so it did no wrong, and it was just brought to life and then discarded. So so it was only doing its like trying to survive and trying
Yeah.
to but then we I mean the society as in at the time uh, by not including it uh, are are the real monsters of the story.
Yeah.
um that was like that part was like I'm really deep.
Yeah.
It was like, okay.
It's a really good book.
Yeah. uh, and then okay, coming to the science fiction part of it,
Mm,
because that's the topic that we the two aspects that make it was one of the I think two aspects of the science fiction which is no longer fiction in 200 years later. I think is
mm.
one is the I think what was that uh, transplant
Yeah.
body of transplanting organs, which they showed that you can now you can also transplant limbs,
Yeah.
just not just internal organs. You can even like they showed the first transplant of a successful transplant of a hand in 1999 somewhere in the UK. And
Yeah.
um,
And bearing in mind the program we watched was 10 years old now,
yeah,
so we've
so
come
I'm
even
sure,
further.
yes, yeah, we've gone further
Yeah.
now. So that has is no longer fiction, I think. And the other the part was uh, Mary Shelley's commentary of the human race, or one human
Yeah.
creating a new race um, that is potentially superior to
Yeah.
our race. And that is in modern times it is the AI, the artificial intelligence, that thing which we don't really know the full capabilities of
Yeah.
right now. And that is exactly brings us to the question, as in uh, we before doing something we need to even look at
You need to
uh,
think of what the consequences will be.
exactly the
Yeah.
consequences can be, and also be ready to take responsibility in the off
Yeah.
case that it
It
could
doesn't
go
go well.
out of hand. Yes. And
Well, I
what
mean,
happens,
it's
like
that's the same. I mean, if you think of it in terms of our ability to accept cause and effect, and that there will be consequences, and
yeah,
that we need to take action, otherwise certain things will happen.
yeah,
Uh, and we're clearly not very good at it, because I mean, we've known about climate change for quite some time,
yeah,
and as a global community, are still dragging our feet, even though, I mean, when our friend Abby was staying with me the Christmas before last, her entire country was on fire for 6 months. you know.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Australia last year. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, who, Abby?
Oh yeah,
For a
sorry.
moment, I was like, okay, yes, yeah, you're right.
The secret online name. yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I think that's a recurring thing, right? Like, I think
mm,
she was the one who pointed that. I mean, she's like, Australia in their summer, and then California on this side of the earth
yeah.
during their summer. It's like wildfires back and forth.
But it was
Uh,
much bigger.
it
It
was,
was
yes,
yeah.
yeah. I think
But yeah.
if like uh, COVID, the coronavirus totally overshadowed it, but then we kind of forgot about it totally. But then, if I remember right, there was like millions of animals died. There was a lot of wild, you
Yeah.
know, I think a few even went extinct or something, right? A number of
I think so, yeah.
insect species or something. There
There
were a
was
lot of animal species that went.
people lost their homes as well.
Yeah. So there was a
I
lot of
was
loss both in the wildlife as well as society.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
sad.
yet there are people who are still blindly moving forward, like Victor Frankenstein.
Yeah. So
So
yeah, that's like that we are bringing it on ourselves without like, yeah, that's true, without
yeah.
really taking heed or taking the right steps to stop that.
Yeah.
But
Unlike the creature, we can tell what's wrong,
yeah,
but to be a part of society, we can't do much about it, which is the problem.
but
But
also there
obviously, a
are
lot of these questions come
some
up with
areas
reasons.
where we have taken the right steps, like
Yeah,
cloning.
yeah,
I think we did right. I mean, right to regulate it at the point before it got out of hand, where like, if
yes,
it did, imagine everybody just cloning left, right, center, just
yeah.
animals
No,
and humans all
I
over
don't
the
want to think
place.
about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we dodged a uh,
yeah. Although you reminded me of a very strange, but very good science fiction movie I watched years and years ago, but I cannot remember anything about, except that the plot was a bunch of Nazis were trying to clone Hitler, or had cloned
wow.
Hitler, and then they presented these babies to families that had exactly the same things happen to them, and then they were trying to recreate the events of of their lives so that Hitler would be Hitler again, because he was so awesome the first time around. And you sort of come into the story when they start finding all of these men of the same age and background who have been murdered by an assassin, because his father died when he was a young teenager, I think.
Mhm.
So they've got to that point where they're trying to recreate the father's death.
Yeah.
And that's how, in the story, people start going, hang on. So, yeah, I don't know why. That just came into my head.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
because it's, yeah, anything related to, I mean, cloning. There's another question that I always had is, I think I may have mentioned it. I'm not sure. I'll just tell you. I mean,
Mm,
this is like, if we were to clone ourselves
mm.
uh, at this point, and then in the middle, like not from the birth, as in you just don't clone a couple. That would be like twins, right? But
Yeah.
right now, suppose in like you right now in your 30s,
Yeah.
if you clone, there's a second Lauren. Will she have the same, uh, like, all the knowledge and the experience that
Mm.
you have built up in your life so far?
No way.
Will that
Yeah.
Lauren version, like Lauren 2.0, have the same, database in her head, or does she have to start afresh? So this is
I
like one
mean,
of those questions. And the other
you.
is,
Yeah.
have suppose she does, like,
Mm,
suppose if the brain is also able to make a clone of itself. So in that sense, it's like both Lawrence have the same experience or the same memories, the same knowledge of up to this point, right?
mm.
Up to the point where you are cloned.
Yeah.
So will Lauren 2.0 make the same decisions, right? Because decisions involve, choosing, right? There are choices. Every decision that you make, say you wake up in
Mm,
the morning, what do I want to have for breakfast? So that's one decision. So that, like, every day you're making multiple decisions. So will
yeah,
Lauren 2.0 make the same decisions on a daily basis? Because till now you have had the same, you have the same,
context.
yeah. So that's the second thing that I always like,
Yeah.
uh, because
Well,
all our
the
decisions are based on what we have,
in
all
front
our,
of us.
yeah, all our the
Yeah.
experiences from the past, right? So let's say the clothes that you pick to wear today, will Lauren 2.0 pick the same thing, or
Well, again, yeah,
we don't
it
know?
does depends. If you're to answer the first question, if you're just cloning, you can't have the same brain patterns. You'll have the same brain chemistry.
Yeah,
I'm not sure you could clone
memory.
me to be 34 and a half. I think you'd have to start with a baby. And then you'd have the whole Hitler thing from that film
Okay,
where
yeah,
you'd have to try and replicate
yeah.
the world
So you
exactly.
make,
But you
like,
would,
I don't know the science of cloning. So I'm just,
mm,
from
you could,
in my imagination, I'm like, you clone and then you have the same
yeah.
age version
Well,
of yourself. But if
if
you
you,
have to
if
start
you,
from a fetus, then yeah, of course.
yeah, yeah.
That
But if you do, you could, assuming that you had cloning technology, you might also have a technology that could map brain waves and brain patterns and translate that across, and then maybe you'd have
Yeah.
something similar. Certainly, there are lots of things in science fiction that ask that question and how well it would work and
Hmm.
whether you could do it. Uh, is it Neil Asher? Maybe people are going to tell me that I've got this very wrong. Where you can store your memory and you just get put in a new body, which is sort of along those lines. But for the second one, I don't think it's possible
As in,
unless the two
you mean
clones
they
lived in the same
upload
time
the
and the same
memory and then sync it
circumstances.
with the new body?
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah. And
plugging
you
in
have
the name
memory
of the
stored.
podcast. Um,
Yeah. See what you did there. Yeah. But you couldn't replicate the way the 80s were. I mean, I saw the end of the 80s, I saw the 90s. The way the world is and the way the world feels has
yeah,
changed so much over that time
yeah. So
that
the
even
experience
if,
also changed.
yeah, even if you put uh, me point two
Hmm.
in the same places, even if I grew up in Biddulph and then I moved to Stafford and then I went to the same school and I went to the same university, you wouldn't get the same me
Yeah,
because
the times are
uh,
different.
yeah, the things that get taught in schools, the way things are taught, the food
Yeah,
is different,
yeah. The technology is
um,
different and
the language is different.
everything. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I had my first mobile phone when I was about 14, maybe 12,
yeah,
and it was just one of those tiny little Sagem things that
yeah.
you could play Snake on and call people.
Yes.
And now I have a computer that has pictures, it has games, it
Yeah.
has music.
So it's
Uh, I
like a
I've
lot of
just used it
our,
to turn down my heating. Like we live in the future. It's
yeah,
weird. We live in the world that the Jetsons predicted, which is
yeah.
very strange.
So what you're saying is, our surroundings influence, our experiences, I mean, more
Yeah,
than just our DNA, or what is within us.
yeah,
So it's like the friends you make, let's say,
yeah,
or the TV shows you watch, and it's like all these little
yeah.
things shape us. um,
And it's not just your decisions or your context that would have to be the same. Everyone around you in the whole of the world would have to make the same decisions, because
yeah,
what if you made all of the same things happen, but the one pivotal thing that changed me that month was meeting a random person
yeah,
because they happened to walk down the road at the same time as me.
yeah, 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 yeah.
um but then we're getting into multiverse theory and
Yeah. I know that
yeah,
that's also science fiction. uh,
yeah, that's another day. Let's do that one another day.
yeah, so that's all but that's within the topic of our podcast.
That actually is very much more Philip K. Dick, which is a good segue into the next podcast because I believe that is Philip K. Dick.
Oh, okay. So then, yeah, that's yeah. I mean, I don't know what's coming, but so
Yeah.
looking forward to
I've
that.
written it in my diary. Who is on every day? So I should look in my fancy diary.
But
Yeah,
before, I
Philip
think.
K. Dick.
Oh, so
I thought it was H.
that's tomorrow.
Yeah.
Uh, okay. Now, so before we end today, um, I just like okay. There was one other thing that I wanted to before we ended. Just forgot. The like I already touched the two upon the science fiction. She started that like what else? Did we address the fact that for like the first 6 years of the book's publication she did not use her name,
Mm.
and I think we talked about that, right?
Yeah. It wasn't until later that she put her own name on it because I mean women didn't.
Yeah,
As I said, her mother was one of the first people who did.
yeah,
And I think also when she'd written it, she knew there's a lot in it that would alarm devout Christians of the time
oh, okay,
because you've got the whole concept of playing God by creating life.
yeah, yes,
You've got grave digging, so you've got the whole they won't be there for the resurrection
yeah,
argument.
yeah,
And then you've got, I mean, at the time it was quite a sexist time. You've got the whole, oh, but a woman can't come up with this nonsense. And
yeah,
so she didn't want to have to deal with any of that. And then, of course, at the time that she was going through that, she was also going through 6 miscarriages, which
yes,
is a lot.
yeah,
And then
that makes sense.
eventually, obviously, her husband passed away,
Yeah.
and then it sort of she was for a long time she was more focused on getting his work published.
Oh,
Um,
so I yeah, I don't know what. So he was a writer as well.
yeah, yeah, he's a really famous poet,
Percy was it like Percy Shelley, right?
Percy Bysshe Shelley.
I see.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, he's part of the Romantics movement. Um,
So it's like okay. So she wrote this. She published this in. She wrote it in 1816. She published it in 1818 or something, I think. And then 1823, he dies, her husband,
yeah,
and
he
then
drowns.
yeah, and then she moves to England. She moves
Mm,
back to England, London, and then she realizes or she notices that her book has become has taken over. Like it's become
yeah,
very popular, and that is when the immediate next reprint she puts her she finally is
yeah.
able to muster up. I don't know if it's courage or whatever it is. So the immediate print in 1823 it comes out as Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Oh, if it's in 1823, then Percy Bysshe Shelley is still alive, and he
Oh,
was
he
the
is.
kind of I mean, he was a romantic, by which suppose I am betraying my slightly snobbish opinion of the romantic poets of the time. As well, he was a romantic, but he was probably also quite a supportive husband. Um,
No, I but
I
okay,
think I
maybe
read
I got the
somewhere.
year wrong. But what I'm
No,
saying is like
I think he encouraged her
okay, yeah,
to put her name on it because it was really good and he was proud of her. I don't know where I read that.
I
That
see.
may be bullshit. I'm not sure.
Okay.
um,
Oh, in that case, but then the way I understood it from the episode was like he passed away, and then she moves back to London, and then she realizes that her work has become really popular,
mm,
and then she puts her name on the she attaches her and she reveals that she is the one who wrote Frankenstein, and then she's like I was just curious to know what was going on in her personal life or what she was going through internally. Then she was like, okay, now I'm ready to tell the world that I'm the person who wrote this. um, because up until that time she was like, okay, it's
mm.
fine, I don't it doesn't matter, it's fine as long as people are reading my book, and I don't need the the fame or whatever it is.
They
And
moved back to England together.
oh, okay,
I'm reading Wikipedia while you
I see.
while you're
So the
talking.
episode was wrong. I mean, the way they said it was like her husband passed away first, and then that caused her to move to London alone. Is how they said it. But anyway, it could be either of the two.
No, sorry, I'm in the wrong time. They moved back to England together. Bad stuff happened, as like some of their friends died, and then they went back. Um,
Okay. Maybe
uh,
I got the timeline wrong.
no, I think I'm getting. I think I might be getting it wrong. There we go. 1822, still in Italy. Yes, she moved back after his death in 23. Yeah, yeah. Well, of course. So she's not poor by
Yeah.
any stretch of the imagination, but she has lost her breadwinner.
Yeah.
So at the time, women had limited options. Women of her station had limited, considered to be respectable options
Yeah.
for making money, um, which is one of the things you've got to remember when people said, oh, women weren't allowed to work. What we mean is women weren't allowed to have professions. We were allowed to do hard labor and horrible tasks
Yeah.
that nobody really wanted to do. Um, Almost everyone in my town would have worked 4 or 5 jobs at this time, but she's of that social class where her options are to remain respectable. She could take in lodgers. That's about it.
Mhm.
So I think she went, well, the novel's doing really well, and I've got to support myself and those of her children that survived. I think at least one
Yeah.
did at the time.
I think because
Uh,
they said that like she
oh,
had four
Yeah, Percy
miscarriages.
Florence.
Right. Okay.
So her son survived.
So you
Um,
think that that was her sole motivation is like
Not her sole,
monetary.
but it's got to be a strong one. It's got
Yeah.
to be a strong one.
Because from what you said, and of course based on the times, uh, it must have taken a lot of courage to come out as, because like you said, it's like first thing, it goes against Christianity because it talks of playing God and this grave
Yeah,
digging and all these things that you should are told, and she's a woman.
yeah.
So it's like this thing where like she must have it must have played on her mind, as in I could be, either I'll get a lot of praise and this is but then I could also be judged, or I don't know how it was at the time, maybe not as in to the
Well,
point of being imprisoned and all that, maybe not that, but then you
not to
can
that
be
extent, but I think her
outcast by
mother
society.
was. I don't think she was, but I think her mother was.
Okay, her
Uh,
mother was also a feminist, and
yeah,
yeah.
but yeah, she. I know she was. She must have been struggling financially because her
Yeah,
father didn't want anything to do with her after she ran off with Shelley.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I seem to
Of
remember
course.
reading somewhere when.
But she did dedicate the
Yeah,
Frankenstein book to her father.
but yeah, but
That I thought
after her
was
husband.
a little. I mean, throughout
I mean,
the.
you
I mean,
must
this.
still love him. You must still love him, but then after Percy's Percy Bysshe Shelley's death, um, her father got in contact and offered to help. I mean,
Ah, okay.
this is I may be wrong, but this is what I'm remembering from when I did my literary criticism of it. Um, but he would only help if the grandson was taken away from Mary Shelley and
Ah,
he raised him because he didn't think she was a good influence because she ran off with this poet, and she
yeah,
said no. So she's I think she must have gone, well, I can say no because I've got this success with this book, and then I can write more books and I can
yeah,
work as an editor. Because
yeah,
she was always helping out with her friends with editing and stuff.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think it
Because
was
like,
less for fame and more a career.
yeah, because they emphasized uh, on how much influence her mother had on her, even
Yeah,
though, I mean, she wasn't there physically.
yeah,
And they said that, I mean, through her journals, they know that she often visited her grave, and she spent a lot of time
yeah,
uh, sitting by her gravestone and reading her works and all that, like you.
yeah.
So it, for me, at that point, it was very strange to hear that. I mean, they didn't really dwell too much on it. They just said that she dedicated her first book to her father, and I was like, okay, that's
Well,
weird.
I mean, until until she ran off with Percy, they had a really good relationship, and that's her
Yeah,
only
I'm sure.
living
Yes.
parent
Yeah.
figure. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess I guess that was her way of
Yeah.
uh, trying to make a step back towards them being cordial again. But I guess it was just never going to
To
happen.
reconcile, because yeah, you're
Yeah,
right. You're right. Yeah, because yeah, we started. I mean, with our talk with the thing that, I mean, he had a lot of influence in society, and he would invite people, and then he would
yeah.
allow her to be a part. So he was very supportive uh, up until that point, supportive of
I'd
her.
say
All,
he was. I mean, the trouble with the Romantic poets at the time is they were very into things like free love and vegetarianism, and that was seen as like evil, totally evil by the English
yeah,
conservative fathers of the time. So he, it would be like uh, it would be like someone from a really rich family running off with a hippie in the middle of the 60s, I suppose, would be the analogy that we could
yeah,
see.
yeah,
And then that parent just never being able to go, but actually they're doing pretty well. They've, their marriage is obviously sound. They have a lovely child, you know, they're
hmm,
never being able to go, oh, but she defied me. I think that's the thing, is
yeah,
because her mother's influence allowed her to go, actually, no, I get to pick.
yeah,
I get to choose what happens to me to an extent. I
yeah,
mean, to any extent that we do. Um, and I guess he never quite got over that. But yeah, I can see why she would, she just because you don't get on with someone at that time doesn't mean you stop loving them, I guess.
yeah. That's true. But I'm sure that strained relationship uh, may have also seeped into her later works, because at the time
Mm-hmm.
of writing Frankenstein, her relationship was pretty good with her father, I would think.
Yeah.
So we don't see that, but I'm sure, like we discussed.
Oh no,
Uh,
no. At the time she was writing, it was already bad because
oh, it
she'd
was
already
okay.
married. She'd already married
Oh yeah,
Shelley.
she married at 16. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I forgot that. Yeah.
So
Oh
it was
yeah.
still pretty raw.
Oh, okay. But we okay. Yeah,
That's
fine.
why I think that's part of the reason why they were living in Italy. Apart from the fact that it was an extremely romantic thing to go off and do, and
Oh,
by romantic in this sense, I do mean the poets of the
okay.
romantic period.
Yes. Somehow I was like I thought, okay, I didn't know. I mean, I imagined it as she wrote it before, but then by the time she sent it to, like, she published it like 2 years later, she was married. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
She married at 16, and then she wrote
But
it
by the
when
time
like,
she wrote it, probably by the time she wrote it, she'd already gone through at least one, possibly two miscarriages. I don't really know the timeline.
oh, okay,
So
that's yeah,
people
wow,
lived faster, I suppose,
yes, yeah,
in general.
yeah. And also I think, yeah, because yeah, the age, what is that age expectancy was also
Yeah.
different, a lot lower.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, I'm very much middle aged in
yeah,
that time period.
yes,
But
same.
we always see this about the past. It's a trope that you come across in archaeology programs, certainly the older ones, is that there's a certain amount of taphonomic bias. So we find fewer remains of older people because they degrade faster. So we tend to say that people died a lot younger. And of course, people did die a lot younger, but I think the average age for about the last millennia has been 60 to 70.
Oh, it has, oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. I mean,
Wow.
Mary Shelley died at 52.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of the times that average is brought down by war
Yes.
or plague. So when
Yeah.
you haven't
Yeah.
got those other things happening, 60 or 70 is what people tended to live to.
Hmm.
And there was
Interesting.
also, especially in terms of society, is people started just, there comes an age where,
So it's
um,
all like probability, right? I mean,
mm,
you're not affected by war or disease or something, you tend to live a healthy life, because
yeah,
they didn't have all these other factors of, all which we have
well,
now,
as,
like pollution
as
or other stuff. And
well, they did. Well, they definitely had pollution because this was the start of the Industrial Revolution.
oh, okay.
Um,
You said millennia, so I just started thinking.
oh, millennia. Sorry, yes.
I went through all the other earlier centuries as well.
Poverty, poverty,
Poverty, yes.
famine.
Yeah, true. Okay,
Yeah,
fine. A lot of factors.
the
Okay.
church deciding that your particular faith is heretical and therefore murdering everybody. Yeah,
Oh,
there's a
man.
lot of
Okay.
hazards, but among the survivors of such, the average is about 60 to 70. We
Yeah.
used to think it was like 30 to 40. So,
Yes, it's true. Okay.
yeah.
All right. Before we end today's
Mm.
episode, let's and okay, tomorrow. What's the plan for tomorrow? I'll let
Uh,
Lauren tell us that. Tomorrow we are
tomorrow,
talking about.
tomorrow we're talking about Philip K. Dick, who's one of my favorite authors.
Okay.
Uh,
What's
who
his most popular? What should I look forward to?
Oh, loads. He wrote "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep," which is
Nope, never
the
heard of it.
basis
Okay,
for what's it called, Blade Runner. Um,
I've heard of that. I don't
Total
know what it's
Recall is
about.
based on his stuff. There's
Okay.
loads of movies are based on it. Adjustment Bureau, which I think is brilliant. I know some of the people disagree with me on that, but Ubik. Uh, the thing about Philip K. Dick, as we will discover in the documentary, is he had a very strange and, to my mind, extremely cool way of looking at the world.
Okay,
Um,
I see.
yeah, he approaches everything from a totally different angle,
Okay,
which is good fun.
okay,
From a consumer point of view, probably less fun from him being him. uh,
okay. Can't wait to find out. So, all right. Uh, oh wow, it's snowing. It's literally a snowstorm outside for me.
Same here.
So for the viewers, I don't know it shows one viewer. I don't know if it's you or if it's somebody else.
It
Uh,
might be Neil downstairs.
oh, okay.
If it's Neil, hi, put the kettle
Hi.
on.
uh, okay, it shows one viewer for me. I don't know who it is. The chat is empty. So for that one viewer, if whoever's watching, will be live again at this time, not this time, as in
Two
two
hours ago.
2 hours ago. Yeah. So that's 2 p.m. English time,
Yeah,
UK time, 3 p.m.
British time.
European, Central European, or 1 p.m. UTC if you are anywhere else in the world. Um, so that's when we'll talk about the second episode of Prophets of Science Fiction. And today we talked about Mary Shelley and Frankenstein, and I think that's a good. We'll That's about it. Should we?
Do
Uh,
you want to talk about upload and sync and what
yeah.
that will
Okay.
mostly
We'll
be about?
yeah briefly for we'll spend about a couple of minutes. We'll talk about what is this podcast. I think we did not. We just talked about
Yeah.
the title. So upload and sync is as we we briefly touched upon how it came to be. We'll be talking about books and movies. So it's more about visual and uh, what literary content.
Yeah.
So I think most people who know us, or if they are watching, will know that I am the more watching. I mean, the one who uses his eyeballs for content. I mean, oh, okay, both of us do that.
I also use
Yeah,
my
I mean, I know,
eyeballs.
I know. As I said it, I was like, okay, that didn't come out right. Um, I'll
You're the movie guy,
let's attempt the second attempt. Okay.
and I'm the book one.
Yes, you're the book
Yeah.
person. I am the movie person.
Yeah.
So we thought that it'll be nice to assign each other, as in respectively, as in Lauren gives me a book to read, and
Hmm.
then I give Lauren a movie or a TV. No, not a TV show. Let's stick to movie. TV
Hmm.
show takes a lot of time.
Hmm.
So a movie to watch, and then we'll get back on the podcast, and we'll exchange what we thought, our thoughts and
Yeah.
our ideas, or whatever it is, our critiques on what we have read or watched, and then that will be the episode. So
Yeah.
that's, did
And
I
then
say that
every
right, or?
sixth, I think, yeah, and then every sixth one, I get to give you a movie, and you get to
Oh
give me a
yes,
book.
yeah, that
Yeah.
will be our bonus.
Yeah.
So that'll be like, yeah, I mean,
That'll
the
be a full set of six, and then we'll
yeah,
do
and
another set
and
of
the
six.
challenge for that is especially because Lauren has read a lot of books. So for the challenge for me would be right, like finding a book that she hasn't read, and
Yeah,
for Lauren it'll be like trying to find a movie that I haven't watched, which
yeah.
I think it's easier for her than it is for me.
Maybe you'd be surprised. There's a lot of stuff that people think you should read that I haven't read. So
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
that'll be interesting. That'll be one of our interesting, for episodes that you can look
yeah.
forward to.
And I think we're doing our first challenge exchange after the eighth one
Okay.
of these,
Yes.
which will be
Yeah.
next Thursday.
Yeah. So our first 8 episodes will be the covering this mini series that is
Hmm.
the Prophets of Science Fiction. Okay. So look forward to our next episode tomorrow at 3 p.m/2 p.m/1 p.m. and we'll be back. Until then, say bye bye to the stream.
Bye bye.
Yes, bye.
Have a good one.
So I'm ending stream.